Hi everybody, welcome to Yoga Lab again. For this Yoga Lab, and actually for the next couple, I want to talk about a pose that I think is pretty important to spend a little time on because it is a pose that can be very vulnerable to the neck. So that pose is called Salamba Sarvangasana, otherwise known as supported shoulder stand or Sarvangasana, the full shoulder stand. So let's start with a question for a moment, and that is when somebody is trying to come into supported shoulder stand, why is it that some people can straighten their torsos with their legs straight up to the sky, and why is it that some people can't do that? And does it have to do with maybe the hamstrings? Does it have to do with core strength? Does it have to do with the amount the shoulders are open or the shoulder strength? Those things can be considered, but the first place we want to take a look at, in my mind, is how much flexion do they have in their neck. So let's take a moment here and take this spine and just show you the example here. If I take somebody that has flexion of 90 degrees in their neck, so that is somebody that can bend their chin or neck forward so the chin comes close to touching the chest. And that, by the way, is less common than we think. Then, for example, this is the base of the skull on the floor. That person will probably be able to get their torso in line with their legs straight up to the sky. However, like most other people, if we have somebody who has flexion that comes less than 90 degrees forward, so let's say anywhere below 90 degrees, but most people are like 45 degrees around that range. So the spine then will be bent less here up in the neck. And that person comes down onto the floor, the base of the skull here. That person, because of the amount of flexion in the neck, with being less than 90%, are they going to be able to line their torso and their legs straight up to the sky? No, they're not. Because something has to happen in the body in order to accommodate the less flexion in the neck. And that something is called counterbalancing. So counterbalancing is what happens in our torso and more specifically our hips. So we never want to force anybody into straightening out their legs and their torso into shoulder stand, of any kind of shoulder stand, when they have less than 90 degree flexion in the spine. So what I want to demonstrate here then is this counterbalancing. So if I just take my propping, and I know for myself, I always use one blanket. And let's assume that I do not have 90 degrees of flexion in my neck. I have less than that. So when I come into my shoulder stand, my supported shoulder stand, in this position here, I'm going to have to bend my hips. So for anybody that has less than 90 degrees of flexion in the neck, it's most likely that they're going to have to counterbalance somewhere in the body, and that place is here in the hips. So the legs will not be able to point up to the sky with the torso. So at the end of the day, it's a process. Some people will eventually open up more flexion in the neck by releasing muscles, opening muscles. Maybe there was some ligament damage due to injuries in the past that will heal. But sometimes it comes down to the bones. And sometimes it can also come down to the level of the person's practice. Maybe they're a beginner. But sometimes it comes back to the bones. And if it's the bones, they may never be able to have 90 degree flexion and get their torso straight up in line with their legs to the sky. So we never want to push that person, or if it's yourself, push yourself into straightening the legs up to the sky. And another thing that we can consider is if you ever take a look in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, there's no mention of shoulder stand. Salamba Sarvangasana. There's a mention though of Vaparina Karani Mudra, which is more or less the pose I just demonstrated to you, with the hips bent. Because even back in those times, I would imagine, they took into consideration that most people cannot do a 90-degree flexion in the neck. So just some food for thought for your next shoulder stand. The next few videos, I'm going to expand on some techniques for shoulder stand and ways to open up the neck as far as relieving maybe some minor pain and aches in the neck and shoulders. And we'll dive into that some more. Thanks for your time, everybody. Have fun with that and be safe with that. Peace out.